Imagine this: you pull away, you go silent, you cut off contact, thinking that this will make them realize your worth. You wait, hoping that your absence will create longing, that they will wake up and chase you, but instead nothing happens. Days turn into weeks, and still there is no message, no sign of regret, no desperate attempt to win you back, and suddenly the silence that was supposed to be your power starts to feel like your prison. You wonder, did they ever care? Are they even thinking about you? And just like that, the very thing you thought would make them crumble is now making you question yourself. This is the trap. No contact, when done from a place of need, is still attachment. It is still waiting, still seeking, still giving them power. But what if I told you that there is another way? A way to detach so completely that they feel the shift in their soul. A way to reclaim your energy so powerfully that you no longer need to wonder if they miss you. Because by the time they do, you will already have outgrown them. This is not about playing games. This is about transformation. And once you understand this, everything changes. Energy is power. This is not just a phrase. It is a fundamental truth that governs every interaction, every thought, and every outcome in your life. The reality you experience is not shaped by what you say or do alone, but by the energy you emit. The frequencies you hold determine the experiences you attract. Most people believe that if they withdraw, if they stay silent, if they resist the urge to react, they are taking control. But silence is not power. Absence is not strength. True power is in shifting your energy to a higher state, a state where you no longer play by the same emotional rules that kept you trapped in the first place. When you hold on to resentment, fear, or the desire to control, you are still energetically entangled with the person you are trying to detach from. Even if you never send a message, never make a call, and never reach out, your energy is still feeding the dynamic. That is why so many people practice no contact and still feel drained, still feel the pull, still wonder why they cannot move forward. Because their mind may be in resistance, but their energy is in engagement. They are still orbiting the same emotional patterns, still tethered to the past by an invisible thread of thought and emotion. Shifting your energy means stepping out of this loop entirely. It means understanding that the most powerful response is not withdrawal, but transformation. When you elevate yourself, the external world reorganizes itself to match your new state of being. This is not metaphysical speculation. It is neuroscience. It is quantum reality. It is the way the universe functions at the most fundamental level. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel carries a frequency, and that frequency is either keeping you tied to a version of yourself that still needs validation, or it is propelling you into a new reality where you are the creator, not the reactor. Most people operate from the outside in. They believe that if they change something externally, if they cut contact, if they ignore messages, if they disappear, then the other person will feel the loss and come running back. But this is an illusion. Energy does not respond to physical actions alone. It responds to the internal state that fuels those actions. If you are practicing no contact from a place of pain, fear, or the hope that they will notice, then you are still giving away your power. You are still holding the belief that their response determines your worth. And as long as you hold that belief, you remain stuck in the same emotional cycle. The shift happens when you stop focusing on what they think, what they feel, or what they will do next. The shift happens when you redirect all that energy inward and begin to master your own state of being. This means training your mind and body to exist in a new emotional frequency, one that no longer resonates with the past. When you do this, something profound occurs. The person you were trying to detach from suddenly feels the loss, not because you cut them off, but because you are no longer feeding them energetically. You have stepped out of their reach, not through avoidance, but through evolution. And that is a force far more powerful than silence. This is why meditation, visualization, and self-reprogramming are not just self-help techniques. They are tools of transformation. When you close your eyes and begin to imagine yourself as the person who no longer needs external validation, you are already rewiring your brain. When you breathe deeply and anchor yourself in a state of peace, you are teaching your nervous system that safety comes from within, not from another person. When you replace the old emotional triggers with a new sense of purpose, joy, and fulfillment, you are changing the frequency you broadcast to the world. And when your frequency changes, everything changes. The person who once took you for granted begins to sense something different. The dynamic that once kept you feeling small begins to dissolve, not because you forced it, not because you played a game, but because you became a different person. And the truth is, when you elevate yourself, the people who once had power over you can no longer reach you in the same way. They can feel the shift. They can feel the absence, not of your presence, but of your attachment. And that is when their reality begins to crumble. This is not about revenge. It is not about making someone suffer. It is about liberation. It is about breaking free from the illusion that your power exists outside of you. Because the moment you understand that your energy is the force that creates, that attracts, that shapes everything in your life, you will stop looking outward for validation and start cultivating the internal state that naturally commands respect, love, and abundance. And when you do that, you are no longer just practicing no contact, you are practicing mastery. The quantum attraction shift is not about cutting someone off or forcing them to notice your absence. It is about stepping into a new version of yourself that no longer resonates with the old dynamic. Most people believe that attraction is about playing a game, about controlling external circumstances, about withholding attention so that the other person feels a void. But true attraction is not about manipulation. It is about frequency. It is about becoming someone so internally fulfilled, so emotionally whole, that the old patterns and relationships can no longer attach themselves to you. At every moment, you are emitting a frequency. That frequency is determined by your thoughts, emotions, and the unconscious beliefs you carry about yourself. If you are holding on to feelings of rejection, unworthiness, or the need for validation, you are radiating an energy that keeps you trapped in the very reality you want to escape. Even if you say you are moving on, even if you act indifferent, your energy betrays you. The universe does not respond to words, it responds to vibration. And as long as your vibration is still tied to the past will continue to manifest in your experience. Most people struggle with detachment because they are focused on lack. They believe that if they pull away, the other person will chase them. They think that silence creates mystery, that withholding creates desire. But what they do not realize is that if their internal state is still longing, still hoping, still craving validation, then nothing has truly changed. The person they are trying to affect can still feel the attachment even if no words are exchanged. This is why no contact often fails, because the energy behind it is still rooted in need. The quantum attraction shift is different. It is not about withdrawal. It is about transformation. It is about moving into a new energetic state where the old attachment simply does not exist anymore. Imagine two tuning forks. If one is vibrating at a low frequency and the other at a high frequency, they cannot resonate with each other. The lower vibration cannot pull the higher one down unless the higher one chooses to match its frequency. This is what happens in relationships. When you shift your energy to a higher state, one of self-love, peace, and inner fulfillment, you stop resonating with the past. You no longer match the frequency of the dynamic you were once trapped in. This shift is not about pretending to be okay. It is about actually becoming someone new. This is where deep internal work comes in. You must train your body and mind to exist in a state of emotional independence. Every time you catch yourself thinking about the past, replaying old conversations, or hoping for a certain outcome, you must consciously redirect your focus. Instead of feeding energy into what was, you must invest that energy into what you are becoming. This requires a level of awareness and discipline that most people never practice. But those who do, those who commit to mastering their internal world, see something extraordinary happen. The moment you stop seeking, the moment you stop waiting, the moment you truly release all attachment, the other person feels it. They may not understand why, but they will sense that something has changed. The energetic cord that once tied them to you has been severed, not through force, not through resistance, but through evolution. And because nature abhors a vacuum, they will instinctively try to reconnect. They will feel the void, not because you are absent, but because your energy is no longer available to them. This is not magic. This is physics. This is how energy works at the quantum level. Everything you experience is a reflection of your internal state. If you are in lack, you attract more lack. If you are in need, you repel what you desire. But if you embody abundance, if you radiate self-sufficiency, if you move through life with a sense of wholeness, then everything around you must shift to match that frequency. This is why the greatest power is not in silence, but in transformation. The person who once took you for granted will not feel your absence. They will feel your evolution, and that is something they cannot ignore. Mastering emotional detachment is not about ignoring, suppressing, or avoiding your emotions. It is about rewiring your internal state so that external events no longer have control over your well-being. Most people believe detachment means cutting someone off, staying silent, or pretending not to care. But true detachment is not an act. It is a state of being. It is the ability to remain centered and unshaken no matter what happens around you. It is the shift from reacting to creating, from being at the mercy of circumstances to being the master of your emotions. The reason most people struggle with detachment is that they are still emotionally invested in the outcome. They say they want to move on, but deep down, they are still hoping for something to change. This internal contradiction creates resistance. When you suppress your emotions instead of transforming them, they do not disappear, they grow stronger. The more you resist, the more you stay attached. You may not reach out, but you are still energetically tied to the situation, replaying old conversations, imagining different outcomes, waiting for some external validation that will give you closure. But closure does not come from the outside. It comes from a decision to free yourself internally. Emotional detachment is not coldness or indifference. It is not about shutting down your heart. It is about developing the ability to experience emotions without being controlled by them. The mind and body are conditioned to react in predictable ways. When you go through heartbreak, rejection, or loss, your nervous system automatically activates the same patterns of pain, longing, and insecurity that have been wired into your brain over time. These emotions feel real because they trigger physiological responses, racing heart, tight chest, anxious thoughts. But just because you feel something does not mean it is absolute truth. The mind is simply repeating old programs, and those programs can be rewritten. The key to detachment is reconditioning your nervous system to no longer associate a person or situation with your sense of self-worth. If someone's presence or absence still has power over your emotions, it means you have unconsciously placed your happiness in their hands. This is not love, it is dependency. Love is expansive, freeing, and abundant. Dependency is restrictive, fear-based, and rooted in lack. The moment you recognize that your emotions are not dictated by the external world, but by your internal programming, you take back your power. To rewire this pattern, you must first become conscious of it. Observe your triggers without judgment. When a thought about the past arises, do not suppress it. Instead, take a step back and witness it as if it were happening to someone else. Notice how your body reacts. Does your heart rate increase? Do you feel tension? Awareness alone begins the process of transformation. When you observe a thought instead of identifying with it, you create space between you and the emotion. That space is where your power lies. The next step is to replace the old emotional response with a new one. Your body is addicted to familiar emotions. If you have spent months or years feeling unworthy, anxious, or heartbroken, those emotions become your baseline state. The body craves what it knows, even if it is painful. To detach, you must introduce new emotional experiences that override the old ones. This is where practices like meditation, visualization, and breath work become essential. When you meditate, you are training your mind and body to exist in a state of peace, regardless of external circumstances. You are rewiring your neural pathways to respond differently. Instead of reacting with fear, you begin to respond with calm. Instead of feeling loss, you cultivate inner abundance. Every time you redirect your focus from the past to the present, from pain to possibility, you are breaking an old pattern and creating a new one. The most profound shift happens when you no longer need detachment as a strategy. Many people attempt to detach as a means to an end, to make someone miss them, to gain the upper hand, to manipulate a response. But as long as your detachment is conditional, you are still attached. True detachment happens when you genuinely reach a point where your peace is no longer tied to external factors. You no longer need someone to see your worth because you see it yourself. You no longer seek validation because you have already given it to yourself. You no longer fear loss because you know that nothing real can ever be taken from you. When you reach this level of emotional mastery, everything changes. The people who once triggered you lose their power. Situations that once caused anxiety no longer affect you. And the paradox is, the moment you stop needing something, that is often when it comes back to you. Not because you chased it, but because you evolved beyond it. And in that evolution, you step into a new reality where you are no longer a victim of your emotions, but the creator of your life. Reprogramming your subconscious is the key to true transformation. Every experience, every reaction, and every belief you hold is rooted in subconscious patterns that have been conditioned over time. The way you respond to relationships, the way you handle loss, and the way you perceive yourself are all the result of neural pathways that have been reinforced repeatedly. If you still react to someone's absence, if their presence or approval still dictates your emotions, then your subconscious is still programmed to seek validation externally. This is not about willpower. It is not about forcing yourself to move on. It is about understanding that your mind is running an old script, and that script can be rewritten. The subconscious mind is vastly more powerful than the conscious mind. It controls 95% of your behaviors, emotions, and thoughts. This is why people find themselves stuck in the same cycles, attracting the same types of relationships, feeling the same emotions, even when they want to change. No matter how much you tell yourself that you are over someone, if your subconscious still associates them with feelings of love, worth, or identity, you will continue to feel an emotional pull toward them. This is why affirmations alone do not work. Simply saying, I am strong, I am over this, I do not care, will not override years of conditioning. The only way to break free is to access the subconscious directly and install a new program. The first step in reprogramming is awareness. You must become conscious of the thoughts and emotions that are operating beneath the surface. Most people live on autopilot, reacting to emotions without questioning them. They feel sadness and assume it means something is missing. They feel longing and assume it means they need to reach out. But emotions are not facts. They are just signals from the subconscious, telling you what patterns are still active within you. The moment you become aware of these patterns without automatically reacting to them, you create the space needed to change them. The second step is disrupting the old neural pathways. Your brain is wired for efficiency. It follows the path of least resistance, repeating the same thoughts and reactions because they are familiar. If you have spent months or years associating a person with love, security, or happiness, your brain will default to those associations, even if the relationship was unhealthy. To break this cycle, you must introduce new experiences that contradict the old pattern. This is where meditation, visualization, and emotional rehearsal come into play. When you meditate, you enter a state where the subconscious mind is highly suggestible. This is why deep meditation feels so different from ordinary thinking. It slows down brainwave activity, allowing new information to be absorbed without resistance. If you sit in meditation and vividly imagine yourself as someone who is whole, confident, and completely detached from past attachments, your brain begins to accept this as reality. The more you repeat this, the stronger the new neural connections become. Over time, the old pathways weaken and the new ones become dominant. Visualization is another powerful tool. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between real and imagined experiences. If you close your eyes and repeatedly visualize yourself feeling empowered, free, and completely at peace, your brain begins to rewire itself to match this new identity. This is why elite athletes use visualization to enhance performance, because the brain responds to mental imagery as if it were real. The same principle applies to emotional transformation. The more you mentally rehearse a new state of being, the more it becomes your default. Emotional rehearsal is the final and most crucial step. You must not only think differently, but feel differently. Thoughts create emotions, and emotions reinforce thoughts, creating a feedback loop. If you repeatedly feel empowered, confident, and fulfilled, your brain will wire itself to sustain those emotions automatically. This means that instead of forcing yourself to move on, you will naturally feel indifferent to the past because your subconscious is no longer programmed to associate it with your happiness. Most people fail to break free because they try to do it at the conscious level. They think if they just avoid contact, distract themselves, or stay busy, they will eventually stop caring. But avoidance is not healing. True transformation happens when you change the subconscious patterns that created the attachment in the first place. When you do this, something incredible happens. The people who once had power over you lose their grip. The situations that once triggered you no longer have an effect. Not because you forced yourself to move on, but because your mind and body have been rewired to a new reality where they no longer matter. The moment you stop seeking external validation, you reclaim your power. Most people do not realize how deeply they are conditioned to look outside themselves for a sense of worth. From childhood, the mind is trained to associate love, acceptance, and security with how others respond. Praise from parents, approval from teachers, admiration from peers. Each of these moments reinforces the belief that happiness is something to be earned, not something that comes from within. As a result, people grow up depending on relationships, attention, and external recognition to feel whole. They measure their value based on how someone treats them, how much they are wanted, or whether they are chosen. This unconscious programming is the reason why detaching from someone can feel like losing a part of yourself. But that feeling is an illusion created by a mind that has not yet realized its own completeness. When someone withdraws their attention, ignores your messages, or distances themselves, the automatic response is to feel less than, to wonder what went wrong, to seek answers, to try to restore what was lost. This is because the brain is wired to chase what it perceives as scarce. The more unavailable something becomes, the more the mind fixates on it. But what if that entire framework is false? What if the belief that your worth is tied to another person's presence is the very thing keeping you stuck? The truth is, no one can complete you. No one has the power to define your value. The feeling of emptiness that arises when someone pulls away is not proof that they are special. It is proof that your mind has been conditioned to look outward instead of inward. Breaking free from this cycle begins with understanding that self-worth is not something you acquire, it is something you remember. You were born whole. You were born worthy. You did not need validation as a child to exist in a state of joy. You played, you laughed, you explored, not because someone gave you permission, but because it was your natural state. That natural state never left you. It was simply buried under years of conditioning. The key to reclaiming your power is not in convincing someone to see your value, but in realizing that their perception was never what made you valuable in the first place. This shift is not about ego or proving a point. It is not about pretending to be indifferent or acting as if you do not care. True confidence is quiet. It does not need to announce itself. It does not seek validation, nor does it reject it. It simply exists. When you no longer crave external approval, you become unshakable. You are no longer controlled by someone's actions, words, or choices because your emotional state is no longer dependent on them. The irony is, the moment you reach this level of inner certainty, people are naturally drawn to you. The energy of self-sufficiency is magnetic. Those who once overlooked you suddenly sense something different. They do not understand it consciously, but they feel it. It is the energy of someone who no longer needs, and that is the most attractive energy there is. Most people chase love, attention, and recognition because they believe those things will complete them. But chasing creates resistance. The more you need something, the more you push it away. The more you focus on lack, the more lack you experience. The paradox is that the moment you stop needing, the moment you stop seeking, everything you once wanted begins to flow toward you effortlessly. This is not about playing games or using reverse psychology. It is about shifting your internal state so that external events no longer dictate your sense of self. This transformation requires practice. Every time you feel the urge to seek validation, pause, ask yourself, what am I really looking for? Is it attention or is it the feeling of being enough? If it is the latter, then no amount of external validation will ever be enough because the real work is internal. Instead of searching for reassurance, begin cultivating it within yourself. Speak to yourself the way you wish others would. Give yourself the love you have been waiting for. Validate your own worth, not through words, but through actions, by setting boundaries, by honoring your needs, by prioritizing your growth. As you do this, something remarkable happens. You begin to radiate a new energy, an energy that does not beg, that does not chase, that does not shrink in the presence of rejection. And in that space of self-certainty, the past no longer holds power over you. You no longer need someone to validate you because you have already given that to yourself. And that is the moment everything shifts. When you step into your highest self, you shift reality itself. Most people believe change happens outside of them, that circumstances must improve, that another person must realize their worth, that time will heal their wounds. But true transformation does not come from waiting. It does not come from external validation, nor does it come from forcing someone to see your value. It comes from becoming someone new. The version of you that is still attached, that still longs for the past, that still waits for someone to change, is operating from an old identity. And as long as you remain in that identity, your reality cannot shift. Energy does not lie. You cannot trick the universe into believing you have moved on while still carrying the same emotions. The key is not to act as if you have changed. It is to actually become the version of you who no longer needs what you once chased. The highest version of yourself is not someone you have to become. It is someone you already are beneath the layers of conditioning, pain, and limitation. The reason most people stay stuck in attachment is that they continue to identify with the version of themselves that needed validation. They tell the same story, replay the same wounds, reinforce the same beliefs. But identity is fluid. You are not bound by the past unless you choose to be. At any moment, you can decide that the old version of you no longer exists. That person who needed closure, who overthought every interaction, who felt unworthy without attention, that person was a program, a collection of habits and thoughts that you no longer need to carry. The moment you stop identifying with that version of yourself, your external reality begins to shift. People underestimate the power of embodiment. They think change comes from affirmations, from actions, from strategies. But change happens at the level of being. If you are still thinking, I hope they miss me, I hope they regret leaving, I need to prove my worth, you are still tied to the old frequency. You are still waiting for something outside of you to validate your transformation. But the highest version of yourself does not wait. They do not wonder if someone is watching. They do not seek acknowledgement. They move forward fully immersed in their new reality. The moment you embody this, your energy changes, and energy cannot be ignored. Every interaction you have, every word you speak, every action you take carries a frequency. If your frequency is still attached to the past, people can feel it. You may say you have moved on, but your energy reveals the truth. You may try to appear indifferent, but the longing is still there beneath the surface. But when you truly step into your highest self, there is no need to prove anything. The energy of certainty is undeniable. The moment you release the need for a specific outcome, the universe mirrors that back to you. People who once ignored you suddenly feel your absence. Not because you forced them to, but because they can sense the shift. They can feel that you have outgrown them. This is why people who do deep internal work often experience a strange phenomenon. Past relationships resurface, old connections try to return. People who once took them for granted suddenly reach out. This is not coincidence, this is physics. When your energy shifts, it creates a void in the old dynamic. The person who once had power over you senses that they no longer do. The energetic ties that once connected you have been severed, not through resistance, but through evolution. And the human ego, wired to crave significance, suddenly becomes aware of the loss. But here is the real secret. By the time they notice, you will no longer care. Not because you have hardened, not because you are playing a game, but because the version of you who once needed them no longer exists. This is the ultimate power, not in making someone miss you, but in evolving to a point where their absence no longer affects you. The highest version of yourself is not seeking revenge, is not hoping for recognition, is not lingering in the past. They are too busy living, creating, expanding. And that is the moment everything changes. The moment you stop seeking, the moment you stop waiting, the moment you detach from the old version of yourself, everything shifts. This is not about silence. It is not about games. It is about evolution. When you reprogram your subconscious, when you stop chasing validation, when you step fully into your highest self, the past loses its grip on you. The person who once occupied your mind so completely begins to feel your absence, not just in your silence, but in your energy. They sense that something is different. They feel the space where you used to be. But by then, it no longer matters because the version of you who once needed them no longer exists. You have risen beyond them, beyond the past, beyond the limitations that once held you back. True power is not in making them miss you. True power is in becoming someone they can no longer reach. And when you step into that version of yourself, you don't need to wonder if they regret losing you. You already know the answer. Good luck on this journey of transformation. Own your energy, reclaim your power. The world is waiting for the best version of you. Thank you.